Hey everybody, RetroPie Guy here. Today I'm going to do a full setup demo and review of the M30 Bluetooth Gamepad Controller from 8BitDo. This is a really great controller, very similar to that of a Sega Gamepad Controller. You have your 6-button configuration here, D-pad on the left. So what we're going to do today is we're going to jump in here, we're going to take a closer look at the layout of this controller, go over all the functions and features, then we'll jump into a brief tutorial on how to set this up and map it with RetroPie, followed by a couple of gameplay demos. Then we'll jump back out and talk about the pros and cons of this particular gamepad controller. So let's get started. Alright, so let's take a closer look at this 8BitDo M30 Bluetooth Gamepad Controller. Just looking at it, you can see that it looks just like a standard Sega controller. So we have our 6-button configuration A, B, C, X, Y, and Z over here on the right-hand side. Left-hand side, we have our D-pad. This D-pad is rounded. Again, looks just like a Sega D-pad, which I always liked because it has that rounded backing there. So if we're navigating on the diagonal, super easy to just jump over here, you know, and we can circle on here really nicely too. So it just has a really nice glide, much better than a Nintendo style, just regular cross-piece D-pad, because again, on those diagonals, if this was just the cross, we'd have to press right here in the center, and it's just a little bit harder to navigate on diagonals, whereas this, with that backed area there, it's really easy to just navigate exactly where you need to go. It glides really nicely, really great feedback. I'm not even in a game yet, and I already like this D-pad. So here in the center, we have our blue start button. Down at the bottom, this minus button here is what I will end up assigning as my select button. And then we have some additional buttons here, which we could utilize for different functions in RetroPie. I'll probably end up using this one right here as my hotkey enable button. So if I'm in games and I want to jump back to my game collection menu, I would hit this button, which I'll end up mapping as my hotkey enable, and start at the same time to exit games. It'll bring me right back to my game collection menu. So let's jump up to the top here. You notice we have an L and R button, so these are going to be our shoulder buttons. No trigger buttons on this particular gamepad controller. Here we have our power supply port, and this is going to be our pairing button. So when we want to pair this with anything via Bluetooth, we just hold this down, and you'll notice that on the bottom we have these 4 LED light indicators. These are going to scroll back and forth when we're in pairing mode, and depending on which mode we set our gamepad controller to, we'll have different light configurations here. So on this particular gamepad controller, there are a bunch of different modes because this is compatible with Switch, Windows, Android, Mac OS, Steam, as well as Raspberry Pi. So if we turn this over, you'll notice that we have this little label here. This gives us our model information. So if we take a closer look, we can see that this is the 8BitDo M30 Bluetooth Gamepad Controller. It tells us the exact model number, as well as those modes that I just mentioned. So for switch mode, it's going to be Y and the power button. For D input, it's going to be B and the power button. For X input, it's going to be X and the power button. And for Mac OS, it's going to be A and the power button. So I'm going to show you exactly how to set this up on Raspberry Pi next. That covered all of the different functions and features on this particular gamepad controller. So let's jump over to setting this up on a Raspberry Pi 4 running RetroPie.
Alright, so to set up our 8BitDo M30 Bluetooth Gamepad Controller with RetroPie, we're first going to need either a keyboard or a previously set up gamepad controller already paired with our RetroPie system in order to navigate to our configuration settings. So the first thing we'll do is navigate into our configuration settings here. It's usually going to be the collection that has either a Raspberry Pi or a RetroPie logo on it. In this case, we have both. So we're going to navigate in here. We're going to jump down to Bluetooth. We're going to select Bluetooth. And now on our 8BitDo M30 Gamepad Controller, we are going to hit the start button to power this on. You'll notice that we get a flashing light down here in the bottom on the LED light indicators. And we're going to go up here to our pairing button. We're going to hold this pairing button down for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And we'll see that our buttons do start to scroll back and forth here. So now on our screen, we can go and hit this first option, which is pair and connect to Bluetooth device. So it's going to start searching for our device now. And you can see here the first option is 8BitDo M30 Gamepad. So we're going to select that with our regular gamepad controller or keyboard. And we'll go with our first option here in the security mode. And if it brings you back to this page, then it was successful. So if we check on our D-pad on our controller here, we see that we are able to move up and down in this menu just using the D-pad. So we didn't map this yet, so we do have to do that next. So with our regular gamepad controller or keyboard, we're going to just go over and hit cancel. That's going to bring us back out to our configuration menu. We'll hit B to back out again. And now we're going to jump into our main menu. So you can do that with your start button, and then we're going to navigate down to configure input. So we'll select that option. It's going to ask us, are you sure you want to configure input? We're going to select yes. And here you'll see in configure input, it says one gamepad detected. So on our 8BitDo M30 Bluetooth Gamepad Controller, we're going to hit any of these buttons here. And as we do this, you'll notice that the title of our gamepad controller will populate into the bottom of this box for just a split second. And then it's going to bring us into this configuring page. So this is where we're going to map this. Now, not all of the functions are going to map to this because we are going to have to utilize RetroArch in order to map most of these buttons. So we'll start with the D-pad. So for D-pad up, we're going to hit D-pad up on our gamepad controller. For D-pad down, we'll hit D-pad down. D-pad left, we'll hit D-pad left. And D-pad right, we'll hit D-pad right. For start, we're going to hit our blue start button here. And for select, we're going to hit the minus button here. For A, we'll hit A. For B, we'll hit B. For X, we'll hit X. And for Y, we'll hit Y. So for left shoulder, we'll go up here to our left shoulder. Now, the shoulder buttons do not always work with this initial mapping screen, so we'll give it a try. For left shoulder, we'll hit left shoulder. See how nothing happened and it just actually bumped us down. It says not defined. So this is pretty typical, so don't get concerned if you experience this. I have had this happen sometimes where it actually does map the left shoulder. It has never mapped the right shoulder for me though, so we'll hit the right shoulder, and this is the exact same thing. It just brings us down to the next option. So we're going to bypass all these remaining options because we don't need trigger buttons or thumb buttons or any analogs because we don't have those on this gamepad controller. So we're just going to hold down A or any other button that we've already mapped here just to skip all these options. We're going to navigate down to the last option, which is the hotkey enable option. All right, so hotkey enable is going to be the button that we hit in order to exit games and go back to our game collection menus. So I'm actually going to utilize one of these extra buttons on here. So I'm going to use this one right here. So I'll just hit that button. It populates in. And now in order to save all these mappings, we're just going to hit the A button. It'll load for a couple seconds, and then it should bring us back to our main menu. So to exit the main menu, we'll hit B. And you can see just by going on our D-pad left and right, everything did map correctly because we are now able to scroll through our different collections. So now in order to continue with the mapping process, because right now all that is mapped is A, B, X, and Y, and the D-pad, and start and select and our hotkey enable function. We don't have use of our shoulder buttons, and we don't have use of C and Z right now. So depending on what games you want to play with this, if you want to play Nintendo games, then you have to go through the Nintendo RetroArch settings and map the Nintendo games that way. If you're going to go into Sega games, which I assume is going to be what most people are doing with a controller like this, I'll demonstrate that right now. So we'll go into Genesis here. And now we're going to jump into a game. I'm actually going to go into Sonic. And now once we load into the actual game and we get past these loading screens, we're going to hit our hotkey enable button and X at the same time. So hotkey enable was this button. So once we do that, again, this hotkey enable button and X at the same time brings up this RetroArch menu. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit B to back out one screen, and we're going to go over to the right column, which is the settings column. We're going to navigate down to input. We're going to select A, and now we're going to go down to port 1 binds. We're going to select A to select that. You'll notice that here for device index, it says 8BitDo M30 Gamepad Controller, so we know that it is recognizing this particular controller here. And now we're going to go down here, and you'll notice that we have all the mapping options within RetroArch right here. So we know that we mapped the A and B button. We know that we mapped the start, D-pad. We know that C and Z are the ones that we did not map. So we're going to select the C button here. So to select it, we hit A, and now we hit the C button. As we did that now, I do want to mention that we're now going to be switching over to C is going to be our A button on here in the menu. So if we select now with A like we just did, you notice that nothing happens. So now C is going to be the button that we select with. So now to go down to this Z button, which is what we need to map next, we select it with the C button, and now we hit Z. And we see that that now mapped it correctly. So we're going to go down now. Those were the only two options and mappings that we needed to do in here that weren't done because on a Genesis game controller, we didn't have the shoulder buttons, so the shoulder button mapping is not an option within this collection. So we're going to go up to Save Auto Config right here. We're going to select it with C. You'll notice that it populates in the bottom left corner. It says that the file was saved successfully. So now we can exit this. So we're going to do the exact same thing that we did in order to get in here. we're going to hit Hotkey and X. Sega! That brings us right into Sonic the Hedgehog again. Alright, so that was how to set this up in Sega Genesis. Now if we want to use this gamepad controller in a different collection, let's say we want to use it in Super Nintendo. Let's go over to the Super Nintendo game collection, and I'll show you exactly how to do the same thing here, because you do need to map this a little bit differently for each game collection. Alright, so I'm going to jump into Super Mario World. And we'll do the exact same thing, Hotkey and X at the same time. That brings us back here. We'll hit B to back out, jump over to the settings column, go down to input, and we'll select C to select it. And we'll jump into port 1 binds again. And here we can map these controls if we want to change things around a little bit. Now, so here's the only difference. On the Super Nintendo, you obviously have shoulder buttons. So we didn't map those before in Genesis because the Genesis controller does not have shoulder buttons. So to do this, we're going to go down to L and R, which are our shoulder functions. We're going to select it with C, and we're going to hit L. Now we'll do the same thing with our right shoulder button. We're going to select it with C. We're going to hit the R button. And just like that, we were able to map that. All right, so our L and R shoulder buttons are both mapped now. So all we need to do is hit Save Auto Config, but I will mention that you may want to go in here and customize your different mappings, because obviously this particular controller, which is modeled after a Sega controller, is very different than that of a Super Nintendo. So your button mapping and layout is going to be completely different. So for the most part, you'll be able to get used to it, but if you do want to go in here and customize it, you could do the exact same thing we've been doing. For B, if you wanted to change B right now, should be mapped to the B key. But if you do want to make this a different button, then you would just select it with C and change it to whichever button you want to change it to. So I'm just going to leave it as it is right now. I'm going to go up here to Save Auto Config just to lock in those changes we made to the shoulder buttons. So I'll select that. It'll confirm in the bottom left corner. We can now go in and exit RetroArch again with our hotkey and X at the same time. Brings us right back into our Nintendo game.
Alright, so you can see from those gameplay demos that the M30 Bluetooth Gamepad Controller from 8BitDo is an absolute phenomenal gamepad controller. Everything works extremely well. Really nice action across the board. All the buttons just pop. They're super precise. Really love the D-pad. I always like the D-pad on Sega's gamepad controllers. I just like that they're rounded. They're not your typical cross D-pad. You're able to navigate on those diagonals incredibly well. They're just super efficient, super precise. Just have nothing but the nicest things to say about this controller. It's definitely a throwback to your original Sega controllers. Definitely very close to what I grew up playing. So I just really like it. I think they're really authentic. They definitely added some different button options here. You have the shoulder buttons up here too, so it definitely covers all of the bases. However, it does differ quite a bit from if you're playing like a Super Nintendo or NES game. So you do have to go through that additional mapping process just to kind of customize this a little bit. I do find that going through those settings can be a bit much for some people. So if you're getting this controller, you're probably going to feel that it works best in the Sega games because, let's face it, that's what it's designed after. That's what its intended use is. You can certainly use it in other collections as I demoed here. It does work really well, but you do have to go through those additional mapping pages through RetroArch in order to set this up properly. So in terms of the cons on this particular controller, I think it just comes down to the setup. It's definitely some extra steps than a lot of the other 8BitDo controllers out there. A lot of them, when you map them in that initial screen on RetroPie, you don't have to go into RetroArch at all unless you want to customize things. Most of them work extremely well, like those that have a PlayStation layout or Super Nintendo layout. It just really goes along perfectly with RetroPie, so you don't have to go through those customizations. This one you definitely have to customize quite a bit. You're in RetroArch doing the additional mapping quite a bit, so it is a little bit inconvenient, but if you want something that is a throwback to those old Sega controllers, and if you're playing Sonic, and Sonic, let's face it right now, is just a huge, huge, huge collection to get into with all the movies and the reboots going on. Everybody's jumping into Sonic these days, so if you want to have that authentic feel, this is definitely the gamepad controller for you. There's some other controllers out there on the market that have the same sort of 6-button configuration in terms of the layout here. They're great for playing Sonic as well. This one, though, I think is the highest quality out of any of the other ones that I've seen. The fact that it is wireless and goes off of Bluetooth is definitely a plus, so it does make that a little bit more convenient for you. In terms of the quality here and the functionality, it's top-notch, as most gamepad controllers from 8BitDo are. So that's going to do it for today. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, smash the like button for me. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do a whole bunch of different videos based around retro gaming. And of course, check us out online on our website, www.retropieguy.com. Thanks for watching.